You know, someone asked, how do you deal with portrayal in life? And I think I just said portrayal, but you know what I'm obviously meaning. I'm talking about betrayal. Ah, the errors of English. Well, that was a little tiny lesson, isn't there? That you can actually misspeak. Well, yep, did you know that? Well, now you do. Anyway, the point is, I want to talk to you about betrayal. So, did get there, did we? 27 seconds in. I think that the best piece of advice that you can possibly receive on this is, if you expect that everything that everyone ever does is in their nature, you will never be disappointed. That is not the same as saying that you don't have boundaries, but it's pretty close. Let's be honest. It's more a way of looking at the world where you aren't shocked. I think that the biggest strategic error in the military always is to be caught with your pants down. Sometimes when they actually are. Sometimes I am imagining that there has been a lot of ancient soldiers that were doing a shit when some barbarians came into their camp, stabbed them in the neck. You're not expecting it when you're on the John. And I think that that's what happens in personal relationships. In life, I think that at some point, at whatever point, you, not just them, obviously, this is always just about you. You, at some point, are always going to disappoint the people around you. That is a natural part of human life, but I think that the overarching thing that you should have about that is that, and this is what this all links into, that if you have this outcome on life, that if you understand that at some point that is going to happen, you are going to disappoint someone and they are going to disappoint you, you can kind of move past it. There's a lot of things that I think happen when people just get a hang up in life of, I expected this from everyone except you. Why? Why are they any different? It's one of those harsh truths, isn't it, kids? Time for a dose of reality. You ready? It doesn't taste good! But it is a unpleasant, unnecessary fact of life, which is that human beings act out in certain ways. And the overarching principle of life, I think, is that really everybody has a bunch of unique character traits that are positive and negative to them. Not unique. I mean, there's only so many emotions. Some people are just more happy than other people. Let's just put it that way. And so, the way that you get around that is by saying that, all right, this is the happy side of me, and this is the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde version, right? The Mr. Hyde version, what you want to try and do when you're dealing with human beings as much as possible is to just keep that shit away, because I really think that it starts to erode relationships very quickly if you just let out your dark side, because people don't want to see that, obviously. The other thing that is very important about all of this is that if you expect that you are going to disappoint someone in the future, you can kind of prepare for it. You can kind of understand when you've overstepped the boundaries. It gives you, again, a little more self-awareness than is usually required of most people, right? So, for instance, one of my dark side things is I think that I just never bring anything up, and I'm just like, that's it, and then I just explode at some point, and that's a really bad trait of mine, that I kind of just sit there and fester on things that are pissing me off. But I think that other people that are just too out there and do that all the time, that's obviously, I think, is going to be a worse trait in life. You really just want to be picking your battles when it comes to that. But when it comes to the idea that you are getting betrayed by someone, that's one way of looking at it. But it's probably not even remotely accurate. How often do you think that somebody has come up to you with the deliberate intention of trying to ruin your life? There'd be people that are just greedy. There'd be people that would not care, but that's very, very different to them intentionally thinking about how to fuck you over. You must have done, usually, something very, very awful to them. There's your odd serial killers every now and then, but I really don't think that the average person is betraying you. They're kind of just less aware. They're not thinking about other people as much. First off, just knowing that, how we're always talking about the way that you reframe things, don't you think that that is a much better way to look at life of, well, they're kind of just dumb in that regard and they just weren't thinking about it and that's why they cheated on me or whatever. But to sit there and think, and I'm sure that there are some twisted people out there that do that, of I'm just going to fuck him up, I'm just going to figure out, I'm going to wait until they walk into the bedroom and then surprise, I'm fucking their best friend. That would be a very sick, abnormal human being. Most of the time, when somebody has been upset by someone, it is completely accidental. I think that that's one place to put it in, which is just that that is their unconsciousness floating through the universe. And that unconsciousness has hit against something that I guess that you're more conscious about because you're conscious about yourself. But another way of thinking is that it's just like a lot of interactions, and I like this. It's a very Eastern philosophical way of thinking about things. You ready for this? It's two people's unconsciousness hitting with each other. I think that most instances, in fact, probably you could probably be a human being and go through your entire life without someone trying to screw you. I really don't think that anybody has in my life. I think that if I really reflect on it, there's been very, 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 very few examples of somebody doing that. Most of the time, it's just they have some abnormal piece of human behavior like we all do, and then that just came to the surface at the wrong place at the wrong time, and then and that's what happened. But that's life. I think that the best way to get over betrayal is to just understand that even if they do have that mean streak in them where they are actively trying to destroy your life, just understand that that is them. And then you see that ugly side of them, you kind of just accept it as more of a whole. And that if you do understand that, like, you know, that is part of their wider being, doesn't that make it more forgivable? It definitely did to me. When I started looking at the world instead of there's all these Machiavellian plots in the world started making a lot more sense. Yes, in politics, I suppose, there would be a bunch of evil architects, but even there, most of the time, when you have your John Barilaras or your Gladys Berejiklians, look, in a lot of ways, it's a lot more infuriating because it's like, then get out of the position. But it's really not coming from a place of, I want to destroy the habitat of 1,000 species. It's, I don't give a fuck. No, I'm not destroying that. There's a tree over there. They can just live in that one. They have that idea. So, when it comes to you and you dealing with people in your life that are doing that to you, just understand, everything that a human being does is because that is part of them. And it is not conscious. And if it's not conscious, then it's forgivable. You really do need to start looking at human beings like dogs, because there really isn't that much of a difference apart from the fact that they can eat garbage and we'll get sick if we do it. You know, unless you're an untouchable in India, then you're probably used to it. But in the West, I don't recommend that you eat your own garbage, but free country, go nuts. I would say that if you start thinking about human beings more as dogs, including yourself, I think everything just becomes a lot more forgivable. You know when you walk home and the dog is chewing on your remote? Yes, okay, at the moment, at that time, you are so infuriated and incensed. But then as time goes on, if you think back at it, you think, well, it doesn't know that it's a remote. It doesn't know what a remote does. It wasn't thinking, oh, okay, you know what? You know what's going to be a really good move for me? Is if my owner gets pissed off at me and smacks my butt until I go outside and I get locked outside for the rest of the night with no dinner. That is the night that I am looking for. They were just thinking, oh, toy. Because it does. It looks exactly the same as a dog toy. Most of the time when somebody is doing that, that's the case. And usually if you explain to someone how you've screwed them over, most people, because most people have some degree of empathy, are going to apologize or at least feel bad, or at least they will rectify it. But if you just think that that's something that is so unforgivable, so like detrimental to you, which I think that has happened before with relationships that I've had, where that person was just so damaging that I thought, nah, that relationship isn't worth recovering, then you don't. Right? And then also the other thing that I think happens with a lot of relationships is just at some point along the way, say that you've been dating someone for 7 years, 8 years, it's not necessarily that either of you are bad, it's just that people do grow with 7 or 8 years of experience, and then they move apart. So I think that that's what happens a lot of the time as well when people get betrayed. I think it's just like, look, if they did something that was so bad to you to begin with that you feel betrayed and you can't forgive it, well, then it's better that you're just not in the same space, because there would have probably been a lot of warning signs and a lot of things that made your life more difficult that were leading up to that moment, that you could have just severed the relationship, and yet you didn't. So, God severed it for you. Anyway, if you found that helpful, there is the Jordan Shanks Self-Help channel. You can sign up for 2 videos extra a week, one for the Wayne Dyer level, which means that you get 2, and then if you sign up to the Jim Rohn level, you get 1. And that, for the same price of a coffee, means that you will have access to a wide library of self-help advice that took me years and years and years and years for me to accumulate, and that you just get in 7-minute bursts instead of spending a week reading one book. I think that you should sign up to that, but I thank you for watching this anyway.